So, my friend, last time we covered a very interesting topic of grief, pain, and the suffering in day to day life and how to remove that. So, that was a break out of the 40 steps that we are doing in order to bring an end to the suffering. This journey is work of all the works in life. Whatever we are doing, we continue to do it, but we bring a qualitative change in our thought, in our speech, and in our action, in our behavior, in our attitude. I'm not against anything, but clarity should be there. So when I say, you see, people marry, divorce, marry, and so this creates a cycle of pain and the pleasure. And in that cycle, we do not see the wisdom, we do not see what is right. And that is why these 40 steps. Another point to understand that we are not clear about the departure point and the arrival point in our life. Is life is a continuity, a cycle of pain, pleasure, grief, anxiety, duality, conflict, pleasure, and that is all? Or life can show us what is beyond all the cycle of opposing experiences. Can we undertake the journey? That is why we have these 40 steps. They are practical. They are practical, leads to awakening, realization, and transformation. Success, peace, and happiness in personal, professional, social lives. Harmony and happiness all the time. And that is why we have undertaken these 40 steps. So, number 2, or I would say number 1. Now, I will give you the glimpse of the previous steps and then the following steps. So, it is good to understand these steps again and again by listening to it again and again so that we purify the mind. We clear the mind about these principles and concepts, and they live with me all the time. So, just a recap, we understood the knowledge of the self is the first step. At the same time, the knowledge of the material world and knowledge of I am. Do you remember I have explained it? Knowledge of I am and I am not. And in the second step, we have undertaken the step how to work, how to perform daily duties and responsibilities in my personal, professional, social, and family life. And it is so simple that it has to be in the mind. We should change that very intent in the mind, and then you perform these activities. That will save you from lot of pressure, anxiety, duality, conflict, tension. In the third step, we also understood that whether I am the doer and the enjoyer, or there is someone who is the doer and enjoyer in me. And in the fourth step, we have understood what is binding desire and what is unbinding desire. In the fifth step, we have understood about grief and which causes lot of challenges in day-to-day life. So in the sixth step, before we take up the sixth step, let us understand few things about mind. I have repeated again and again, mind is the cause and mind is the solution. Everything happening around us. Everything that is happening in experience that is happening in the mind. It is the mind that gives me knowledge and suffering. Please continue the previous practice daily until the four steps are absorbed by your mind. Listener, speaker, no listener, no speaker means dedicated to the practice, and changing the habitual mind means recalling these principles even when you are talking, you are with your family, whether you are in living a professional life or a family life, or whether you are living alone. Our mind. First thing to understand, our mind is like a mirror. You stand before the mirror, what do you see? You see your image. You leave, what happens? The image disappears. It's very clear, we understand that. But in order to explore the nature of the habitual mind, we need to ask ourselves, what? You stand before the mirror again and check. Does the mirror in which you are seeing your image increase the weight, change the color, form? Nothing happens to the mirror. The nature of our mind is like the mirror. But do we really experience it is the nature of my mind? Or we get a thought in the form of an image, thought we get associated with the feeling, some thoughts causes stress, some thought causes pain, some thought causes pleasure. But these thoughts are nothing but the images appear in the mind. Does my mind look like a mirror? And if my mind is acting or is like a mirror, then what happens? Any thought comes to your mind, it stays and it goes away. It leaves no impression. And if it leaves no impression, then the mind lives in calmness, peace, happiness, love, and wisdom because that is the natural state of the mind. Just think, visualize, visualize yourself. And better next time you look yourself into the mirror, then stay away from the mirror and see that there is nothing in the mirror. Again, you stand before the mirror, you see your image, and you see there is no impression. No impression of your color, of your shape, of your size, of your weight is kept by the mirror. This is one way to understand a natural state of the mind. Check again and again. When any thought of the stress and the anxiety enters your mind, become aware. Know that your mind is a mirror. It has an image of that anxiety, stress, duality, and a conflict, or pleasure or pain, and it will go away because the mind does not carry any impression. This is one way of understanding. By this understanding, we will come directly to the topic. And the topic is the pleasure seeking mind is always a defective mind. There is inherent defect in pleasure. And that defect causes tremendous pressure in our life. Now, the second way to understand the mind. Mind is like a camera. Or say, take your phone. You have just sent me a picture. Isn't it? I liked it. Now understand that you have taken the picture from your phone. Phone remained with you. You call someone, still the phone is always with you. You take a video, phone is still with you. You send a message, the phone is still with you. Phone doesn't move from your hand. It remains with your hand. What I'm hinting upon, you have to just live into that awareness. So what I want to say about the mind? This mind does not go anywhere. We think, when you think wrongly that the mind is going everywhere, and that becomes the cause of the stress and the suffering, my friend. The way this smartphone does not go anywhere and still it takes picture, it receives call, it sends messages or it receives the messages, and it also creates videos. All these images are stored in the mind or in the smartphone. So, what is the message hidden in it? The first message, that this mind does not go anywhere. I think of India and I think that as if I am in India, but the mind remains here only. I think of Europe. So that thinking creates an image in my mind about Europe, about India, about you, about me. The mind does not go anywhere. Second thing, that this mind is like a mirror. So, what is the message there? That this mind does not create any impression in itself. Is my mind like this? Then you are free from today. No stress can ever touch you. No anxiety, no duality, no conflict. But am I living into that state? Then what happens to this mind? Why it feels like going to different places. In different times, we start thinking of the past, we start thinking of the future, we start comparing in the present, and we see the mind claims that it has gone to different places. The simple answer is that mind is associated, attached, or detached with an object, with a person, with an event in time and in location. What is that association means? How that association comes? It comes by likes and dislikes. The mind naturally looks at something and by default it has a liking because of the sense organ. So then what happens? Association, and the mind lives in that likes and dislikes, causes attachment and detachment. And there are a series of movement that starts happening in the mind until the mind starts living in delusion. And when it lives in delusion, then we are bound to suffer. I'm telling you, my friend, in every situation, in every condition, with every object. The object is not to blame, the location is not to blame, the time is not to blame. Mind, association, likes and dislikes. It goes through series of steps, processing. Ultimately, it comes and the delusion enters into the mind. That delusion causes the suffering. We will understand that delusion. Go back. What happens when the mind works like a mirror? A thought is an image in the mind. It comes and goes. Attachment and detachment come and goes. It does not create any impression. It does not cause any problem in the life. We start living and working in permanent happiness, peace, love, and wisdom. That mind, when it acts like a mirror, is an empty mind. Have you ever seen the mirror in your room, in your house, is full of stuff? Every time you stand before the mirror, you see it is always empty. That nature of emptiness needs to be discovered in the mind through meditation, through knowledge, through practice. A thought enters into your mind, you have to listen to it again and again and again. And every point, it is always good you listen, write a bullet point, check it, reflect on it, and the more you contemplate and reflect on it, the mind will clear at least 80% of the garbage. Rest 20% will be done by the practice. So this is the sixth step we are talking about, and we are laying a foundation of the step that how to understand the inherent defect in the pleasure Once we have a clarity, we practice, and then that inherent defect is removed. The mind becomes pure, and we start living in peace and happiness. Return again. A thought enters into your mind. You should be 100% clear that the thought enters, or you stand before the mirror as if the thought has entered into the mirror of the mind. That thought does not color your mind with the likes or dislikes. That thought does not create any heaviness or lightness. That thought does not increase the weight. It does not change the height and the length. Similarly, it doesn't have any impact on the mind, provided there is no association. But then why we have a thought in the mind causes suffering? The answer I have given you, association. The mirror does not associate with our image every time we stand before the mirror and every time we leave the mirror. It is my likes and dislikes. It is my attachment and detachment. Mirror does not say, I will keep your image. Next time you stand before me, I will retrieve that image before you. It is all our likes and dislikes. And we have already understood why it happens, because of delusion. And what is delusion? That appears true, but it is not true. You see the water in a mirage, but it is not there. Do you see in the background? The sea and the sky appears to meet together where they never meet. But I see through my sense organs. My mind confirms it. The same thing you will say, my sense organ sees it, my mind confirms. That is why I have stress and anxiety. That is what we are understanding. It is delusion. Then what causes delusion? Like camera, mind stores impressions, images, not for any problem, but for our daily working, day by day. We add the spice of likes and dislikes. The moment you add the spices of likes and dislikes, this thought repeats itself and interferes, and then the problem is there. But why this happens? Because of likes and dislikes. Did you understand it? Let it understand. Let us understand by a simple example. Simple example of a delusion. Long back, maybe 120, 150 years back. A guy went to Britain. He saw the mirror. Britishers told him that, see, by this mirror you can see your image. He liked it, he bought it. He went back to his country, and there was no mirror there. As usual, his wife opened the luggage, found the mirror, and what she saw? A beautiful woman. It was his image. It was her image. Then she associated herself with that image. I'm concluding the first part we have just understood through this story. So now she thought, you see the association, what she thought? Because she had never seen a mirror, she saw a beautiful woman in that mirror. So she thought my husband had a relationship with this beautiful woman, and she got upset. She became crazy. She became stressed. Understand, with reference to the mind in the mirror, camera, or the smartphone that we have just discussed. So she went to her parents' home with the mirror, and after 3 weeks, her father and mother got upset. Why she is not going back? So her father went to her room to find some clue, and he found the clue because he had also not seen the mirror. So he saw the mirror, and in that mirror he found an old guy, his own image, and he got upset. Why? Now see the association. That is how we associate. Oh, you are my son. Why you are doing like this? You are my mom. You see association? So his father saw an old guy in the mirror, which was his own image. And what he thought? Oh my gosh, my beautiful daughter stopped loving her handsome husband. She is in love with this old guy. Association, remember this. You have to realize the story through the mind as a mirror, mind as a camera or a phone. So he took that mirror to show his wife, this is the problem. That's why my daughter is not going back to her husband home. But her father did not speak anything to his wife. And then his wife found that mirror. She saw that and she got upset at this old age. See that this guy is uh, in love with another old lady. That is how the thoughts moves in association with the likes and dislikes and causes the problem. That is why I explained the mind like a mirror and mind like a smartphone. Now what happens? Is there any problem? There is no problem at all. We see from the story. So when his wife did not return after a month, so the husband went to the daughter's home, and then he listened to the entire story from his wife, from his father, daughter's father, and the mother. He said, bring the mirror. And he said, mirror shows you your own image. And then they all realized and they started laughing. When the delusion is there, it causes havoc, it causes chaos, it causes suffering. So, what is the journey of our life? To remove that delusion. What causes the delusion? First stage, likes and dislikes. In final stage, delusion leads to ignorance, incomplete knowledge of who am I. And that ignorance causes the stress and the suffering. How to remove that ignorance? By knowledge and practice of meditation. Deeper the delusion, millions of thought has caused the delusion, and they are stored, they repeat itself because of likes and dislikes. That is why we have a 40-step journey. We are in the sixth step, the inherent defects of pleasure. So, first thing that we have a clear understanding of the departure and the arrival point in meditation. Then we practice meditation and we discover the emptiness that I just explained. In that state of emptiness, the real self reveals itself. And when the real self reveals itself, then what happens? The knowledge of the reality reveals in you. And when the knowledge of the reality reveals in you, then you laugh and smile like those four guys, the husband, wife, and the parents of daughter. The delusion has no basis at all. But we create a base for it. The way the daughter created a base for delusion. Look at this beautiful women that I see in the mirror. My husband is in love with this beautiful girl. What should I do? What should I not do? I'm so much stressed. Think of the thoughts that enters into the mind of that daughter. Now is the time come, I knew that. She is, you associate the previous in events with the same event. So you have multiple thoughts and the multiple thoughts clouds your mind. Mind is clouded, you enter into delusion and now you start fighting or you start divorcing. Just see, think of it. Think of it. This is how one thought, association, and the entire journey of the stress and the pain enters in our life. Now, the most important question again, why mind does not act like a mirror and camera? The simple answer is pleasure seeking. What? Mind is seeking pleasure. But mind is like a mirror. Mirror, do you think that a mirror receives more pleasure when you stand before the mirror or when I stand before the mirror? Mirror says, I'm not very much pleased because you have long beard. You did not trim it because of the COVID. See that? Just see. Imagine the mirror mind, mirror mind, mirror mind. I'm talking to you, your image appears in the mind. I'm talking to, say, David, image of David comes in. Just I'm giving an example of different names for the namesake. Eric, yes, mind. And then what happens? Once I finish the talk, all the names are gone. No, it is not gone. Because of my habit, because of my impulse, because of my instincts, because of my repeated nature going back again and again and again to the same thoughts. The mind is running after those thoughts for the sake of the pleasure, for receiving the pleasure, for confirming the pleasure, where it is not. Do you see the inherent defect of the pleasure? Now we have come to the main topic of inherent defect of the pleasure seeking and pleasure seeking mind. I like pasta. Previous image is stored there because of liking, because of the pleasure. So the previous impression triggers. Triggers? What it triggers? An idea of the pleasure. An idea of a pleasure is delusion. Whatever masters teaches, anything and everything outside in the world, they are not the object of pleasure because it is experienced in the mind. The mind does not go anywhere. Stick to those two principles, operating principles in our today's step or today's talk, or to explore the mind. The mind is not going anywhere. I experience the pleasure inside, but the object, any object, cannot give me the pleasure in this world. So that is what we started understanding the word delusion. So the past impressions, triggers, gives an idea the pleasure is outside. Then the mind forgets its nature. When the mind forgets its nature, it strips the intellect from its wisdom. Then the mind stops working like a mirror and a camera, and then the mind becomes the pleasure seeking mind. It does not remain as an instrument. Every time you listen to it, pick up the principles. I have included more than 15 small principles in this step of the journey. So once you are able to discover and extract those 15 small principles, you will discover that this mind is like a mirror. You will discover this mind is like a earphone. It doesn't go anywhere. We move it anywhere we like, unconsciously, habitually, instinctively, and becomes the cause of delusion, and the delusion causes the suffering. Let us pick up, the entire journey. You have to extract almost 15 or little more sub principles. Every time you listen, think of it. You have to think, contemplate, reflect. Oh, this is one point, second point, third point. The more you write, or if you say, if you write in your mind, I can promise you, you will start laughing and smiling. This is the natural way of living. When the mind, you realize that this mind is like a mirror. Why the heck I am in stress, grief, pain, and the problem? Continue our journey further. So we have understood the part of pleasure. Now, this pleasure seeking mind brings all the suffering in life. Why? Well, always ask why, how, where, and when, so that we have a clarity. So, when we have a clarity, we will drop those thoughts which is causing the delusion, like the daughter who saw the image first instant. She was upset with her husband. Now she saw her image again when she had the wisdom explained by her husband. Then she had a big laugh. Oh, this is me. Did his wife say to her husband, oh, you love this girl? So, pleasure seeking mind brings all the suffering in life. Why? Pleasure seeking mind demands object, person, time, place, should work according to me. Pleasure seeking mind simply means the mind is running and seeking an association either with an object, with a time, past, present, and the future, with a place, with objects. See that. Just become aware. Awareness. Well, if you are seeking association with me, I will guide you how to dissociate. So that is why we say master and a seeker and disciple association. The more you come closer, the more you will learn how to dissociate yourself. So, what is that closeness with the teacher? At a much higher level of the consciousness. So, we are answering the question why the pleasure seeking mind is suffering, because it is expecting pleasure from outside where it is not from people, place, object, time. That is why we say someday we wake up in the morning, it's a bad morning. Come on. Does the sun rise for you or for everyone? You see the answer? Does the sun rises every day in the same fashion or differently so that you have differentiated it as a good morning or a bad morning? Come on. Delusion. Remember that daughter who saw her own image and got upset. My husband loves someone. Even you think that the mind is like a phone which has stored lot of pictures, but you have a choice to delete all those pictures, images, talks, and messages. And whatever you want to preserve it, you can do so. So preserve all these principles in the mind. Don't delete these principles in your life, but delete that is causing the delusion and suffering in your life. Do you understand how to recognize thought pattern? That is what our master says. I have discussed many a times the path of the Shreyas and the path of the Preyas. What is right and good has no element of likes and dislikes, reaction, attachment and detachment and delusion. I must keep those thoughts. You are an expert. Landscaping, what is the meaning? We trim the branches, the leaves of the tree which has become uneven. Similarly, we have to trim those thoughts in the mind that causes delusion and pleasure seeking mind. You understand your profession very well. So when we say that the mind has gone out of my body to different places, to different locations, because it is imagining, it is thinking of those objects, those people, those events, those times. Actually, it is not there. Mind is still with me. If the mind has gone out, say for example, to a person whom you hate, why you are stressed? Mind is already out. So understand, mind does not go anywhere. It thinks, which causes the delusion and the suffering that needs to be trimmed. Pleasure seeking mind causes the delusion. What does delusion? As if the mind is moving. It has gone out of myself. Pleasure seeking mind as if gone out, but it does not go anywhere. But it creates those objects, people, and location within the same mind, within the same mirror where it is not. Simple answer, going after pleasure is the pleasure seeking mind. Why pleasure seeking? Educate your mind. Why you are seeking pleasure? Because we are hollow inside. We are empty inside. We find loneliness inside. That is why the first step, the knowledge of the real self, should be installed in the mind. We do not find happiness inside, contentment inside, peace inside. That is why the mind says, okay, let me find it outside. There is one more thing that happens. The pleasure seeking mind forgets our true nature. It does not want to believe it. Say, for same example, if the husband did not turn up to his wife and the parents of his wife and did not tell them, come on, you guys are crazy. Look yourself. Now see into the mirror. I am there. See, now the wife is there. Now, dad, you are there. Now, mom, you are there. What will happen to the delusion? It will remain. It will continue to cause suffering. It will cause lot of challenges in the life, fighting, divorce, and what not. That is why we are listening. That is why I am giving you a talk to understand. Knowledge of the Eastern wisdom helps us to remove that delusion. So that is the introduction part of What is the topic? Find the, discover, realize the inherent defect of the in the pleasure. It doesn't mean that we should not enjoy pasta, which I explained before. Enjoy everything, but with awareness. What? That mirror, which is the mind, is reflecting pleasure in the pasta. Finished. Not reflecting the pleasure in the pasta, but pleasure is inside me. So, what will happen? Will the mind run after? The mind will not run after any object. I feel, say for example, I feel being in love with that person. I feel, the mind feels the love inside, which is an object of the mind, like you see yourself into the mirror. He has gone, everything is gone. Mind is empty. Do you see that part? That is the higher state of meditation. That is what we need to do it and understand it. So please continue the practice, previous practice. When you continue the previous practice with understanding, and in this, to listen to it again and again. So after listening, sit down, close your eyes, and find out the small bullet points, the principles there, and see that how many points you find out. And then we will talk, we will go deeper into the inherent defect of this pleasure that blocks our journey to the higher meditation in our next talk. And then we will go for the practice. So the last practice, if it continues for about 3 weeks and you are doing it couple of times, the mind will start acting like a mirror. The mind will know the trees of impressions to be trimmed so that your front yard, the mind that expresses thought, speech, and action, and your patio, your backyard, the inner mind, is clear. And it has started working like a mirror. And also the phone, who stores the impressions that are desired. What is desired? What is right and good? What is not desired? What I like and what I feel pleasant. Pleasant means pleasure. Liking comes from the sense organ, processed by the mind, causes the attachment and detachment, leads to the delusion and the pleasure. Thank you for listening.